Recorded live from the mats of Radical MMA in New York City. The Martial Culture Podcast. Your source for in-depth combat sports and martial arts insights with Coach Rene and Matt Peters. Ring the bell and let's get it on.
Coach Rene.
Mr. Matt.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's our first time in the new studio. We've moved studios many times in our history together, and hopefully we're done. Hopefully we're not done.
Evolution and change is part of life. That's Buddhist theory is that life is change, and you have to go with the flow, or as Hickson says, flow with the go.
I was just going to say that. So I'm a Gracie.
Yeah.
I'm not a Gracie. That was Hickson Gracie, right?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know. So how are you?
I'm good. Yeah, it's been an awesome week. We're getting ready, some of our fighters for some fights coming up.
I saw that. G's fighting again?
Yeah, and we're going to be traveling probably down to Key West, Florida for a fight, which is fun. On the road again. I can't wait to get on the road again.
You're driving to Florida?
No. It's we're going to have to take a plane, I think, But I have some miles so I could do it for free. So,
nice.
Yeah.
It's not that. It's a quick ride down to Florida. I went to Orlando. It was like 2 hours.
Right. The fight, I thought it was in Miami, but it's going to be in Key West, which is that bridge, that long drive from Miami. But I've never been on it. And, I want to explore the stomping grounds of Ernest Hemingway, Key West. It should be interesting to go there. And it was kind of one of those places I always wanted to visit, and the seminal writer lived there, so it should be interesting along with the fight. And looking forward to it. So he's got a number of things cooked up. So does our other fighters.
How's it looking for him? Is he looking? How's his competitor?
Very good. The fight coming up. He's a tough guy. We're fighting for a title. He's no joke. He's good. He's good. So we're really happy. I always say that if you're gonna fight, you should. This is not my words, but Dave Camarillo, who's a very famous jiu-jitsu fighter, trained guys at AKA. He said, "Crave the battle, not the glory." And to me, that encompasses everything that martial arts is. You don't want to be you don't want to fight for the glory. Mm-hmm. Obviously, that's great, but you want to fight to test yourself, to put yourself to see what you stack up against, how you stack up against the best. Mm-hmm. And when you have that competitive mindset, how do I get better? How do I stack up against the best? How can I be the best? How can I push myself to the best? How can I evolve and change and grow? It becomes this ever growing search to be a higher level of combat athlete. And I think also that translates into your life where you just be a better version of yourself, Mm-hmm. And so we don't want tomato cans. We want real tough guys to push us and the threat of losing, And it brings us to some of the UFC fights or the Bellator fights. You can see that, some fights were just tremendous mismatches, and you shouldn't be proud to win a mismatch. I mean, if you had a choice in an opponent, sometimes you don't.
Are we talking about Nunes?
No, no? I don't think so. I mean, obviously it's a skill difference, but Raquel Pennington was good.
She was great. She was coming off a long win streak.
Right. She hadn't fought in a while though, with injury. Mm-hmm. And I think, but it's a different quality of fighter. And as I said, it's not Amanda Nunes' fault per se because she doesn't really pick her opponent.
Sure.
And she kind of cleaned out a lot of the division too. But it's, I would say this. And this is very interesting. It has to do with the women's MMA divisions. We touched on this a little bit in a previous podcast, but the talent pool is not as deep as the men's, and evolutionarily speaking, it's kind of where the men's MMA was for most of the fighters about 10 or 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. However, the top guys, the top fighters in the female division stack up very well against the top males. So Amanda Nunes is not so different from T.J. Dillashaw. Obviously, I think T.J. Dillashaw is a little better, but she's up there. She's Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Rose Namajunas. These are amazing fighters. But the level right below that, it's a steep drop.
Yeah,
it's a steep drop, and those fighters, because the divisions are the bench is a little bit shorter, a little bit smaller. You have these one-dimensional fighters who are not as well-rounded. So, like Amanda Cooper and Mackenzie Dern, it's just a complete mismatch. And I don't know if you heard, Mackenzie Dern didn't make weight.
Oh, by 7.5 pounds.
Yeah, and so she probably came into the fight about 15 pounds over. So she had a tremendous advantage. That being said, Amanda Cooper is just not ready to deal with a grappler at that level. She's not. It's just not. You know, you could see that there are certain things she did. They were like, you have to learn a little bit more. You have to recover your guard a little better.
So the weight difference, it was a factor, but it was not as big of a factor as some people are making it out to be.
You know, I don't know. Look, I'm certainly not the last word on it, and Mackenzie Dern was really much bigger than her. I don't know if you saw that fight. She's much bigger than her, and so she
123 was surprising. She looked bigger than 123.
Yeah, she was coming at 130, was maybe over more. You know, and she's also a very dominant grappler. So the combination of weight and technique is very hard to overcome.
Extra 10 pounds on top of you when you're on the ground makes a big difference.
However, that being said, you know, her reactions were not correct. Like the way she defended, which is not technically correct. So she didn't do the right things.
She's coming from behind and trying to find more of not excuses, but she's trying to cover herself and make herself, because she said some interesting things and not so nice things about
what did she say? I mean, before the fight or after the fight?
Before.
Before,
mostly.
Right.
But you know, she
I didn't hear what did she say?
I mean, I don't know. I have the exact references and quotes, but it was just like it's unprofessional. It was a slap on the face of the profession. I mean, 7.5 pounds. That
is true, though.
Is disrespectful.
Yeah, that is true.
And it is true. I mean, how long was she? She knew she had the fight. It wasn't like she was a last minute.
You know, this is not to defend Mackenzie Dern because you have to make weight. And I'll tell you, this is one fight I lost. I shouldn't have taken the fight, but I got hurt in training camp, and I ballooned out of weight, and I still made weight. I didn't do it right. I did not do it right, but I starved myself, made weight, and that was just at the amateurs. But I'm like, I'm a fighter. I promised to be at this weight. Whatever I have to do, I'm going to make this weight, or I'm going to not fight. And I should have not fought because I was injured. But you know, it's part of the thing is you agree to be at this weight, you should be at that weight. So I'm not apologizing for her, but there's some situations where you get really, really close. And this happened to a number of fighters, and they get incredibly close, and they just cannot get that last 2 pounds, and they give up and they drink a gallon of water, you know, like because they're so they messed up their weight cut so much for whatever reason that they just balloon back, and you know it's all water weight, so you play games with the water. So you know, okay, maybe she was an hour before weigh-ins, maybe she was 3 pounds away, and she just said, fuck it, because I'm thirsty. She's like, fuck it, I'm over, you know, and then she just drank and ate, and, you know, like, that's possible. I'm not saying it's what happened, but it is possible. I've seen it happen, you know, where, and it happened in the UFC too, where a guy really missed weight, but he was super close. Now, there was one, recently, I forgot, was it, it was in the Brooklyn fight, the one in Brooklyn where Conor McGregor threw the chair. One of the guys made weight and was medically stopped.
Yes.
I believe it was.
Was it
Ferguson, right?
Holloway?
Holloway, right. And so, of course, he didn't have a lot of time to prepare. But the thing is, it could have been like, if you didn't, because he said medically stopped. Well, he was like, okay, I'm going to kill myself to make this weight. But when he stopped, how much did he balloon back? You know, that's what I mean. Right. Maybe he was like, you know, 135 or whatever, 145. And then he was like 147, 146 actually stopped. And then he's like 152, right? You know, 2 minutes later, you know, because he's just going to drink and eat right away. Right. You're dying, you know?
Well, and he do what Daniel Cormier did and just push down on a towel.
That's bad. That was really bad. That was sneaky. That was really sneaky.
We didn't get a chance to talk about that, but we can go down a rabbit hole there.
Right. But he you know, he has to stop eating that Popeye's chicken.
I don't know. That's where he gets his power from.
Yeah.
But I'm glad Mackenzie Dern came out with a win. You know,
you are.
Yeah, I'm big.
I think everybody was rooting against her because she missed weight. My wife was rooting against her. Half the people I was talking to, they're rooting against her. I think you know,
it's hometown crowd too, right? She's from Brazil.
Yeah. Well, she grew up here. So this is like people like get on her for this because she like grew up here, but she has a Brazilian accent or something like that. And she's like, why is she pretending to be Brazilian when she's not? I don't know. I'm not here to question anyone's identity, but I know she's, She's half Brazilian. Her dad, Megaton Diaz, is a very famous jiu-jitsu fighter from Brazil, from Rio. He's under Hickson and the Gracie family, and he's amazing. And he taught her, very well. And I know that she spent a lot of time in both countries. So yes, I would say that in her heart, she considers herself Brazilian or Brazilian American, and she represents that country. And definitely, I think in her post-fight speech, she said, I knew if I was going to win or lose, that Brazil would be behind me. So I'm assuming that she considers herself Brazilian, and who am I to tell her who she is or anybody, but people make fun of her because originally she didn't have as much of a Brazilian accent, but it's creeped back, and they make fun of her. They think she's playing around, but I don't think she is because actually, if you study like immigrants and how they surround themselves, like I know people who are born here in New York and live their entire lives in New York, but they're in a ethnic community, and particularly the Korean community. Sure. I have a friend, and he's in the Korean community, and he has a little bit of an accent, even though he was born and raised here, spent almost his entire life here. But his mother, his parents, he speaks Korean at home. He worked in a Korean restaurant, with people speaking Korean. He goes to Korean school, and his friends are Korean. So, he has the little bit of an accent when he speaks English. But, that's his environment. That's part of what America is. Yeah. And then I think if he thinks about it, if he thinks about it, he can kind of turn it off. And I think that's probably what Mackenzie Dern was doing. She's like, oh, I'll kind of what's called code switching in ethnographic studies. You kind of, become a personal chameleon. You're speaking to certain people. So I think she was maybe turning her accent off, but who knows? Maybe that's where she was when she was 9, and because she speaks Portuguese with her dad.
I don't think I've ever heard her voice, to be honest.
No, and it has changed. It has changed. And her boyfriend now is Brazilian. He's a famous jiu-jitsu guy, and so I'm sure they speak Portuguese because his English is not that great.
I love Portuguese.
Brazilian Portuguese, especially, is a beautiful language.
It just sounds so cool.
It really does.
It's like top 5 favorite. You know what language I really like is Korean. As we're talking about it, like it's just got a nice sing-songy style. I don't know. All the Asian languages are beautiful.
Yeah, a lot of people don't think that, but I agree with you. And I also think there's beauty in many languages. Especially, I speak Japanese fluently, and I've studied a tiny bit of Korean, right? Just a little bit. I did not pursue it as much as I was intended, but it's a fascinating language grammatically, and when you learn also that each language is sort of a mirror into people's culture and the way they think, particularly in Japan, it's beauty, it's fascinating, and by learning their culture, learning their language, you can really understand the way their culture works. Yeah. And I see beauty in every language. You know what language also I love to hear? I love to listen? Russian. I freaking love Russian. It's like so cool. It's like I have a bunch of Russian students or Russian speaking students. They're actually not Russian. They're like Ukrainian, but they're Russian speakers. Sure. And I love yelling at them in Russian. The little Russian I know.
When I was a kid, I watched anime a lot, and I tried to learn Japanese so I didn't have to, so I could listen to it rather than reading it.
Anime is like the gateway drug to Japanese.
I couldn't do it.
It's a tough language. My old martial arts instructor, Sensei Miyazaki, was my karate instructor for many years. And when I started studying Japanese, I started studying when I was about 13, 14. And I said, how hard is Japanese? And he's like, it's pretty freaking hard. But he's like, it's like anything. He's like martial arts. It's very broad, but if you take your time and bite at it little by little, you can do it. And he told me that, and I did. And, I'm a fluent speaker of Japanese now. And, I had a career as a translator.
We're really off topic. We'll get back to UFC in a second. But
sometimes
don't people say that
to distract, to go different tangents.
Don't people say that the English is a very hard language to learn as an outsider? Like, both, so like you.
I would say this. It depends where you come from. For example, if you are of Asian descent, meaning you come from the major Asian languages, English is incredibly different. And extraordinarily opaque and difficult to penetrate. I know a lot of Asian parents of my friends who are Asian, and they've lived here many, many years, and they still struggle. And they're very intelligent people, but they still struggle with English. And especially, I did teach English a little bit when I was living in Japan. And when you speak Japanese and you understand the syntax of Japanese, and you see how incredibly different it is from English, that it's very hard for Japanese people to learn English, and it's very hard for Americans to learn Japanese. If you're Korean, the grammar of Japanese grammar and Korean grammar are incredibly similar. They're not identical, but they're incredibly similar. So immediately you get the syntax. Mm-hmm. So like day one, you're like, oh, right, that's exactly how I speak. Like it's just, I just have to replace the words. Uh-huh. But pronunciation wise, it's very different. If you are Chinese and you learn English, the word order, subject, verb, object is the same as English, but they have no tenses. They have no future, like I will go, I went. The tenses don't work the same way. So Chinese people learning English is a little bit easier than a Japanese person learning English. Also, so everything is kind of relative. It depends what language you come from. If you speak Spanish and you learn Portuguese, it's or Italian, they're Romance languages, the same family. There's obviously a little bit commonality, a little overlap, and grammatically you can kind of get it. Mm-hmm. And also, when you're dealing with Western languages, the theory of time is the same. It's really hard for me to explain, but the Japanese theory of time is different in their language. It's fascinating. I cannot explain it unless you take a long time, but basically I'll do this. Like, I am reading and and then I have been reading for 10 minutes. I'm reading, I have been reading is syntactically like different in English. I'm reading, I have been reading. In Japanese, it's identical. There's no difference between those tenses. The way they think of time is different, and it's fascinating. And they don't understand the difference between I am reading and I have been reading, like grammatically, because they're like, that's the same tense. There's no difference. Yeah. So they think about time differently.
I'm getting a headache.
Yeah. So this is something I struggled with, and it's fascinating. But anyway, it's nothing to do with MMA. It was like, this is an MMA podcast. Why are we talking about language and linguistics and things like that?
It's all connected. We'll find a
way
to
we have to bring on someone who's linguistics.
I tried that Duolingo or something for a while. That app that teaches you languages.
Do you ever use like Rosetta Stone? A lot of people have had.
I did try that.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to learn Norwegian. My family's from Norway.
Right.
But
doing the roots thing.
There's no, like, where's that going to get me?
Yeah, I had friends who were Dutch, and I said, well, what if I move to Holland? Like, don't learn Dutch. I'm like, why?
Everybody knows English.
Yes, they know English, and there's like the only Dutch speakers are here and a little bit in South Africa. Yeah. So like, where are you going to use it?
I had a friend that moved to China, and he wanted to learn Chinese, and so he wanted everybody to speak Chinese to him, but they wanted him to speak English because they wanted to learn English.
Right.
How do I learn?
Yeah.
So.
Right. Anyway, it brings us actually. MMA. Yeah, no, but it's funny because learning martial arts and learning a language and learning anything, it's the pedagogy of learning. And the MMA fights were really, really interesting. It's UFC 224. We were talking about the Amanda Nunes fight versus Pennington. But there are a lot of fights on that card. And it is really fascinating because it brings us to a critical way of how do you learn MMA? How do you learn to fight? And there's two camps. And I want to go over each fight in order, right? But there's two camps, right? There says one camp, which would say, and we talked about this in another podcast, be good at everything. And, be a little good at everything. And that is kind of true. And we were talking last podcast about how it's not enough to know one thing or two things. You have to kind of be broad. So Joe Rogan mentioned this a few years ago. He's like, yeah, there's people growing up in MMA now that just walk into an MMA gym and just do MMA from day one. Mm-hmm. And so there's that. And that's the theory of learning that was espoused by the Jeet Kune Do guys, where it's basically be competent in all ranges and all styles, right? And that's not wrong. Nobody's saying that's wrong. Because you do want that. But, and Jeet Kune Do is the martial art of Bruce Lee, but the torch was taken on by his students, particularly Dan Inosanto, and they would say, okay, I have to learn how to grapple, I have to learn how to fight on the ground, throw, I have to learn how to kick and punch, I have to learn how to stick fight, I have to learn how to knife fight, I have to learn how to do this, the more trapping, blocking kind of thing. So they wound up saying, well, we have to be efficient in everywhere. That's how we prepare. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them eventually went on to tactical gun, tactical shooting, things like that. It's not wrong, but it's also like if you go into the academy one day and you do kickboxing one day and you do jiu-jitsu the next day and the next day, you get to be a jack of all trades, master of none.
Right.
So you don't get particularly good at anything. You get kind of good at everything. And there's a lot of fighters like that. And they're coming up, and they're kind of good at everything, but they're not really amazing at anything. Mm-hmm. Then there's the guys like Daniel Cormier, like John Jones, like Joanna Jędrzejczyk, who came up in one style and became mad. Ronda Rousey. There's so many, you know, like what's his name, the Conor McGregor. You know, they came up in one style, whether it was striking or grappling or whatever. They became really efficient at that, and then they branched out. And you saw this fight was this UFC and Bellator, which happened this weekend, and there was also Road FC. It was the weekend of the specialists. So I want to go over the fights, and they were really interesting. One of them is this crazy guy. Have you watched Alexander Oleinik?
The name does not sound
Yeah,
familiar.
he is originally a combat sambo fighter. He fights at heavyweight, 235. And he has, we talked about him before, but he has like, I don't even know how many. He's like, hold on, I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like something like 14 submission wins by the easy kill choke. The easy kill choke. That's all he freaking does. And he is a 10th degree black belt at the easy kill choke. And he fought Junior Albini this weekend, who's, you know, not a bad fighter. But they locked up, and he locked in a standing easy kill. And it's not the first time he's done it. And everybody knows that he's going to do an easy kill. Everybody knows it. This guy's like, that's the easy kill guy. Stay away from the easy kill, and you'll be okay.
That sounds like a great move. Easy kill.
Easy kill, right?
Done.
It's also Sodegura Majime in Japanese. And it's an old school judo choke. But in Portuguese and Brazilian jiu-jitsu, they call it the easy kill. It's named after a judo guy named Ezekiel.
Ezekiel?
Ezekiel, right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Ezekiel, but in Portuguese, Ezekiel, right.
Okay.
He just gets everybody with it all the time. He even, not this fight, but the one fight before, he got mounted and tapped the guy from bottom mount. It's just like incredible. He's incredible. So he's like a typical example of a specialist who pushes his specialty. It's not that he's completely, unschooled in other arts, and he comes from a combat sambo and actually traditional jiu-jitsu, not Brazilian jiu-jitsu, but a traditional jiu-jitsu background. But he's a master sport in combat sambo, and he is a grappler, and he's like, I'm a grappler, and I'm gonna grapple you, and this is my best choke, and wherever I am, I'm gonna put that choke on you. And there's another guy before him, just fought right before him. He's Zaleski dos Santos, and he's a capoeirista, and he had amazing highlight reel wheel kick. Did you see the highlight where he spun around and just wheel kicked the guy's head into
How did I miss that one?
From Brazil into Southeast Asia? It was unreal. It was.
I love those.
Yeah.
Come on.
Oh my God. Yeah. I'll pull it up for you. I'll
erase you.
Yeah. Okay. No, I'll concede. I'm not so fast on the
spinning wheel thing.
Yeah. It was awesome. And again, he's well versed in all aspects of MMA, but he doesn't forget who he is. And then we had Cesar Ferreira versus Carl Robinson, and it was a jiu-jitsu guy, and he put him in an arm triangle, tapped him out. Just pushed the jiu-jitsu. We had Machida versus Belfort, which. Machida's a karate guy, and he karateed him. Front kick.
Karateed him.
Yeah, and actually, and Machida's base style, they call it Machi karate, but his base style is Shotokan, same as me, but his Shotokan, like mine, it's a little different, and so they actually stopped calling it Shotokan, but in Shotokan, it's the front kick that is really a tremendous weapon, and that's what he did. Boom, front kick down and knocked Belfort down, down, just like Anderson Silva knocked him out with it. What was it, 10 years ago?
That's my favorite kick.
Yeah. Boom. I have the poster
one.
Of it in my academy with Anderson Silva. Just simple day one move. In Thai boxing, it's called a teep. Yeah. In karate, it's a front kick. But the Shotokan makes that's their signature, one of their signature moves. And so he just right through his guard, knocked him out. And not forgetting, who he is. And then Mackenzie Dern, we talked about that. The minute it got to the ground, it was over. And then we had an example of that not happening. Jacare trying to be a kickboxer against Gastelum. Probably he had a little trouble taking him down after the first round, but that was not good. And then we had Amanda Nunes, who's a great striker, and definitely there was some grappling there too. And she's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, but she won that fight with superior striking for sure, and footwork, and I mean she's amazing. So and then in Bellator you had vicious Bader knocked out King Mo with the absolute
King Mo.
Yeah, Mohammed Lawal. He used to fight in Pride.
Yeah,
they call him King Mo. He's not the king anymore. He's dethroned completely. He just 15-second knockout, or even less. I think it was just crazy. And
I've heard that name like a long time ago.
But the real guy is Aaron Pico, who this is the guy. Again, he's did not go to an MMA school. He trains boxing under Freddie Roach in the Wild Card Gym. If you're familiar with Freddie Roach, he's Manny Pacquiao's teacher. He's famous, very, very famous boxing coach, like one of the best. And he trains wrestling. He was a collegiate wrestler to D1 All-American super wrestler. And he did not, go, okay, I'm going to walk into an MMA school. He, went to the individual arts and developed a tremendous amount of skill in those individual arts, and then combined it. So, what I'm saying is it was really a night of people who were specialists for the most part, and were able to push that specialty. That doesn't mean that you just are one trick pony. Like if you don't expand your game, you will lose in MMA. That is a fact. Nobody's saying, okay, I'm just going to be a judo person. All I'm going to do is judo. I won't learn any striking, and I'll win. And I actually worked with a fighter. I won't say his name, but I worked with a fighter, and he was a jiu-jitsu man. He's a wonderful person. I won't say his name, but he
it's Conor McGregor.
No, he's a jiu-jitsu man. But he was like, oh, Hoist Gracie proved, this was a long time ago, but Hoist Gracie proved that all you need in MMA is jiu-jitsu. I'm like, oh boy, this is not going to be good. And he had a disastrous time in MMA, and decided to call quits. So obviously, you need to expand your skill set. But how do you do that? Do you walk into an MMA school and just do MMA in day one? Or do you focus on one aspect to really get, very sharp at one thing and then broaden it? And that's kind of where I stand. At Radical, we are more oriented towards the grappling arts. Now, we still train in an MMA context, and that's important, is you don't go too far to the sport. We still train in MMA context, but we're always focusing on knowing what your samurai sword is, knowing what your best move is. The samurai, okay, they had all these different weapons, the tanto and the wakizashi and this, bow and arrow. But, if you think of a samurai, you think of sword. This is a guy, this is my thing. And, all of my students, they also, in the jiu-jitsu world, they know what their top move is. So I have one student, he's the triangle guy. And he's like, if I bring you to triangle, I'm going to get you.
Interesting.
And another guy's the rear naked choke guy. He's like, I get that rear naked choke, I'm going to kill you. And the other one's a arm bar. And I always looking to say, who are you? Who are you? And you don't get to decide. Jiu-jitsu gods, I say, decide. They say, are you going to be a Kimura guy? Are you going to be a armbar guy? Are you going to be this guy? And then you constantly refine that move so that by the time you're a blue belt, you're already at that move, just that move. You're already almost black belt level or black belt level. So if you caught a black belt in it, you would tap him. Now, the black belt probably won't let you catch him in there. But if you started to say, okay, let me catch you in this move, it would be incredibly tight and just perfect. So you constantly hone that identity, and you don't forget who you are. Conor McGregor does not forget that he is a,
asshole.
I don't think he realizes that. No, but he does. He knows he wins with his straight.
Yeah.
That's who he wins it.
So
he wins with that straight.
It sounds like similar to like wrestling, like the fake wrestling, or video games, if you want to go that direction, where you have you're good at a lot of things, but you have your super move, your specialty.
But it's funny you should say that. And I hate pro wrestling, but pro wrestling's roots are in real fighting.
Yeah.
And I think that's how it got started, because the real fighters fought like that. They had their signature move. Oh, he put him in the sharpshooter. Oh,
the people's elbow.
The people's.
He put his elbow on the head. That's
but that's your signature move.
Signature move, yeah.
And I think it started. Now it's a joke, but but it started from real fighters having specific styles and things. He brought the fight to here. That's bad for the other guy.
What's your signature move?
Me, it's interesting. But I would say my best move is what's called the omoplata, which is a shoulder lock with your legs. That's my thing. That's my jam. But I'm, from the rack guard because I'm the creator of the rack guard. So I'm the rack guard.
We haven't talked about that as much as we should.
The rack guard? Yeah, I don't want to
we'll spend an hour talking about it.
So, but
you don't want to know my signature move?
What?
It's where you yawn and then put your arm over your wife's shoulder.
In the movie theater, right?
No, it's not.
Before.
Walking down the street.
I thought before you guys got married, maybe that was the way you.
That's how things started.
Seduced her.
That's my signature move because I don't know anything about martial arts. But yeah, we definitely should spend some time talking about the rack guard.
I would love to talk about it. But yeah, no, I developed. That's my signature thing. It's part of the reason was that when I started jiu-jitsu, I started with my leg not being 100%. So I did play the guard, which means on my back a lot. And I kind of, was just experimenting with positions, but I really started using it when I was exploring MMA. And I'm like, oh, this is where I'm not getting hit. Mm-hmm. And it's based on an old judo position. But what happened was I was training with a friend of mine. His name is Judo John. I hope Judo John's listening out there. And Judo John is an amazing judo fighter. And he
better be with that name. His parents named him right.
Yeah, amazing. But in his judo school, to graduate to a second or third degree black belt, you had to do kind of like what they would call a self-defense judo, which is basically like proto MMA. So the guy comes at you with punches, and you have to defend yourself and tap him out, right? Or, so you have to do that. And judo schools almost never do that, but this instructor is very interesting guy, wonderful instructor. So he had that experience of like mixing judo and striking. Now, when Judo John came to our jiu-jitsu academy, and every time I trained with Judo John on the ground, I was just much better than he was. I was much better than he was, and I had experience, and I was an assistant instructor, and I would win 99.999% of the time. So whether it was in the guard, whether it was, anywhere, but particularly the guard, right? So I said, John, okay, I want to try my hand. I'm thinking about doing MMA. Let's take the gis off. And I always liked no gi a little more, but at that time we were focused a little bit more on the gi. I said, okay, let's take the gis off and let's put the gloves on and add punches. And I absolutely 100% thought I was going to kill him like I always do. Mm-hmm. It was one of the worst beatdowns I've ever taken in my life.
Wow.
Now, he didn't hurt me because he's such a cool guy.
Sure.
But he had that experience of striking and good base. And he did a, old school Randy Couture, Tito Ortiz, just ground and pound beatdown. And my guard fell apart, just fell apart. And that was that moment that I realized, wow, I'm training like a sportsman. I'm developing these holes in my game. So yes, I was focused on grappling. I was getting my skill in grappling, but I ultra focused and gave myself disabilities, blind spots. And so I'm like, whoa, when he adds this thing that we were not allowing 5 minutes ago, suddenly everything's different. And you can see that Jacare had that happen in this fight with Gastelum. He was in the guard, and his guard work, I love Jacare, but his guard work is terrible. Just not MMA guard work. If it's sport jiu-jitsu, his guard work is amazing. But his feet were in the wrong place. He was getting hit. He was getting tagged. And he's not training MMA guard. Mm-hmm. And that I realized that. I'm like, how can this happen where when we put the punches away, I beat him like nobody's business. We put the punches in, it's like I know nothing. Like I know absolutely nothing. Wow. And it was a terrible feeling. After years of training, judo and then jiu-jitsu, because when I did judo, I did ground fighting too. And to feel like you don't know anything. And the gi, Eddie Bravo and a lot of the 10 Planet guys, that's a subset of jiu-jitsu where they talk about this, but they say the problem is the gi. It's not. I disagree with that because the gi gives you extra grips. The problem is not training with punches, which is why I think Eddie Bravo eventually realized why she started the combat jiu-jitsu movement. With slaps, right? Where it's like, okay, nobody's getting hurt. because we don't want to kill each other. We don't give each other brain damage. We want to keep it real. And so from that moment, I was always thinking about, okay, can my opponent hit me? If he can, I'm going to move. Or how do I stop him from hitting me? And the answer was the rack guard, which I already was experimenting with a lot. And I'm like, oh, this is this position. And then I just started developing my game from there. And that was very early in my jiu-jitsu career. And I just started developing more and more and more. And I stole so much from so many other amazing guys. I'm like, they do this move like this. Okay, let me adjust that to put into the rack guard.
Yeah.
So I stole from Eddie Bravo.
The rubber guard.
Yeah, rubber guard at like little concepts. Yeah. And I stole from Marcel Garcia.
Borrowed. Let's say borrowed.
Inspired by. Inspired, right. But you got to give credit where credit's
Sure.
due. You know, I always teach techniques and I say the name. I say, this is the Leo Vera pass number 1. Well, this is the Leo Vera pass number 2. I always say the name so people know that that's where it's from and this person deserves the credit, not me. Now, I'm taking it, but I'm taking it and giving credit where credit's due.
Yeah. Well, if people listening don't know that much about the rack guard, and I don't know that much about it because I haven't seen it or been put in it, thankfully.
Well, you could watch Demetrius Johnson versus Tim Elliott. Tim Elliott used that successfully in to defend against Demetrius Johnson's.
Well, the people that don't know, John Jones did talk about the rack guard on his podcast, and he said the rack guard is legit.
No, that's Eddie Bravo.
Oh, Bravo said that.
Yeah.
But he was on Joe Rogan's podcast at the time.
Was John Jones there?
No, Joe Rogan.
Oh, Joe Rogan, right.
Did I say John Jones?
You said John Jones. Yeah. Joe Rogan. Right. Yeah.
Joe Rogan's podcast.
Yeah, Joe Rogan said rack guard is legit. And, you know, I have to say on this podcast, Eddie Bravo's rubber guard is legit. But then everybody knows that. You know, it's different approaches. The rubber guard was always hard for me because, like, rubber means you got to be flexible. The rack guard is like, it's easy. You don't have to be flexible at all. Like, it says, you know, you just have to make sure you get the position. You have to find ways to get to the position. But when you get there, it's like you don't need flexibility. Yeah. That doesn't mean that rubber guard's bad. Rubber guard's great. It's just some people like myself can't go for a long time because of my leg injury. Mm-hmm. I couldn't do it.
And they mentioned that on the show. That's so interesting that they were talking about how you had an accident and you didn't have as much flexibility.
It was a real honor to be recognized by those guys, and also by Ron Carnero, who used it in the UFC, and a bunch of other fighters used it. And they a lot of times they give me props or send me PMs and say, hey, I saw your video, it inspired me. One of my absolute favorite fighters, and I'm so honored that he uses it, is Barrett Yoshida, who I had the amazing honor to train with. And if you guys know who Barrett Yoshida is, he's one of the best guys on the planet. He is one of my heroes, and he is just a warrior's warrior. He's from Hawaii originally, trained under Ensign Egan Inoue, and then just a great fighter. Did tons of Valley Tudo and sport grappling and this and that. Any venue he was in, he would excel. And I went to his academy to train just to meet him, and I put him in rack guard. And I would say that those matches still wound up with me getting the crap kicked out of me. But he's like, you know, he was interested in the position because it did work, you know. And he's like, well, what was that? And I'm like, oh, this is this thing I came up with rack guard. He's like, oh, okay. And then he does it in a fight. He was in a sport grappling match. He did Fights Pro, and he also did it in Eddie Bravo's EBI. And he on his Instagram, he gave me credit. This is invented by Rene Dreyfus, and
that's amazing.
I was like, oh yeah. and there's few people in this world I respect. I respect a lot of the martial arts, but personally, one of my personal heroes is Barry Yoshida. He's just and that he used it is just such a joy to me, and the person of that level, that caliber, and against opponents who are really good, and it really freaking worked.
Yeah.
You know, like that's also the test. Is that it? You know, in science we talk about repeatability. You know, so if you do an experiment and you're the only one who can make it happen, well, that doesn't mean anything. Mm-hmm. It has to be demonstrably repeatable by everyone. So given the same circumstances in Europe, here in America, in California, in China, whatever, that can still work. And that the great thing about rack guard, the people who are adopting it are really making it work. And I have a couple of friends in California who came and trained with me, and they're using it and also adapting it and adjusting it and playing it a little differently. I had one friend, and he was visiting. He's a great jiu-jitsu fighter, brown belt, and actually I think he has black belt now. But he came and said, hey, I've been playing with it. I've been doing it for a few years. I do this here. And I'm like, huh, that's great. You keep doing that. That's not what I do.
Yeah.
But, great on you. That really is good. And it inspired me. I started doing it like him. I'm like, hey, I'm going to take that. That's really good. And it's evolution. It's going forward and change.
Very cool.
And, but it started, like I said, with my developing my samurai sword. This is my thing. And, one of the great fighters, on the last UFC, Davi Ramos, you could just see this guy is a stone cold killer. And he fought Nick Hine, which is a great judo fighter and MMA fighter, but it was like, he couldn't stop his jiu-jitsu because it was just so much. The sword was so sharp, and when you're so good at one thing, and another fighter is very good but not that good at a lot of other things, generally the person who's extremely good at one thing can push that skill forward if they have a good basis in the other stuff to survive. Mackenzie Dern is a great example. She was doing jiu-jitsu, but she threw a big haymaker from hell at Amanda Cooper, and that started the ground scramble. Mm-hmm. If Mackenzie Dern was like Ronda Rousey, where she had absolutely no hands, she probably couldn't. She'd probably have a little tougher time pushing that fight forward. So it brings us back to that argument. Like, should you train MMA from day one, like that kind of Jeet Kune Do philosophy? Or should you just develop a specialty and a real fearsomeness in one element of the game? And I don't know the answer. I can say how we do it at Radical, and you can say that, generally speaking, the proof is that being really amazing at one thing and then lifting up the other parts of your game is kind of the recipe for success at this point. But I don't know if that's going to change. Maybe in the next 5 years, all these young kids today, maybe they're going to turn the tables and say, no, if you train MMA like this and you do everything at once, but you do it like this, they change the pedagogy, the way it's taught. So it's not the techniques. We all know the techniques that work, but how do we get people good to learn? How do, those guys listening out there who are for self-defense or for MMA, like they're probably asking themselves, well, how do I train to be the champ or just to be as good as I can be good? Should I be doing kickboxing 3 times a week and jiu-jitsu 3 times a week and blah, 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 or should I just do an MMA class or whatever? It's a hard, tough question. I'll say in our academy, we really focus on still always MMA oriented, but really focus on making you very good at grappling first. And then when you've developed that really strong foundation, don't have to be an expert, you don't have to be a Olympic level, but a really strong foundation, then we'll start working in the striking. Because there is another problem, and you can see this with a lot of fighters too. They hyper evolve so much that they can't dial it back, and they're too stiff. Like, especially I find with wrestlers, like there's certain wrestlers, we'd say the wrestlers are really great, but there's certain wrestlers that are so stiff they could just never pick up boxing well. Mm-hmm. And I kind of riff on Daniel Cormier, but he's amazing wrestler, but he's a little clunky in striking. He yes, of course he's trying to get better, and he doesn't suck, but
he sucks. I didn't say that.
But
no, he doesn't suck.
No, but there are problems with the move because he's so hyper evolved in one discipline. Mm-hmm. To dial it back was hard. So I don't even know the answer. It's a fascinating discussion.
Is there? It's not like more. It's individualized more than there's an answer. Like every person's different.
No, could be. Yeah, could be. But I don't know about that.
Because there are some genetic freaks out there that, like Yoel Romero,
right,
that breaks all the rules.
That's true.
But they're 1 in a million.
Yeah, but Yoel Romero, I think, is a good example of someone who is not good at everything.
No,
he's not. He's great wrestler, which he doesn't even use, but he always had power. So he's like, I'm going to explode and be powerful and not get taken out. Mm-hmm. And it works for him, and that's all he does. Yeah.
How do you think Mike Tyson would be in an MMA fight? You
Mike
brought
Tyson
up power
of today.
No, Mike Tyson in his prime.
Okay, you're not the first person to ask me that, and it's funny because Mike Tyson's an icon, and of course he's had trouble. Let's put his other stuff on the side. Let's just talk technically in his prime. His boxing style is infighting, which if you're an infighter. And I was talking about this with a dissection of some fighters. If you're an in-fighter, you better have a great takedown defense or be really good on the ground. Because if you're infighting, you're right there to be taken out.
Yeah.
And now Mike Tyson has a very low center of gravity because he's short, and he also doesn't have long legs, right? So he's more upper body than lower body, which means he's hard to take down. And he had a lot of experience in like actual combat in the streets because he grew up hard, and he has this familiarity. I've seen him talk. I've seen a lot of interviews. He's one of the few boxers from the very beginning was an MMA fan. And I think that's because he was not just a boxer. He's like a street villain, you know? Like, I mean, hey, let's be honest here. He says in his bio,
he's a bad boy.
He is a bad, yeah. Like he got to scuffles and, you know, with weapons, like, you know, he understands the power of grappling. And he was a huge fan of the Gracies and their approach too.
Really?
Yeah. So, and they, you know, they challenged him too, you know, back in the day. Yeah. The Gracies sent him a challenge, which, you know, there's no money in it. So of course he's not going to do it. But I would say this, whether we're talking Mike Tyson or Bruce Lee, one, there's certain problematic aspects of taking a person out of their time, you know, and saying, what would they do today? But they're also, I would say both these individuals, whether we're talking Mike Tyson, Bruce Lee, they're smart enough and agile thinkers enough in terms of combat sports to seek out the people who would fix the holes in their game. Mm-hmm. Because those are the two people who always ask me about it. How would Mike Tyson or Bruce Lee do in an MMA fight? And Mike Tyson, without any other training, would have a puncher's chance, just like who's the one who fought Randy Couture? Shoot, I forgot. He's the world heavyweight champion. And he had
Holyfield?
No. It was later. He's God damn it! Yeah, can you look it up? Yeah. It's they fought in the UFC, and he started following around Randy Couture, and then Dana White set it up, and he you know, he had a puncher's chance to take, you know, James Toney, right? And James Toney is no joke. I mean, like, yeah, he was a little past his prime, but the guy's no joke, and even I believe he was the guy who knocked out Tim Sylvia as well. So, like, he's no joke. But obviously a little bit over the hill, but so was Randy Couture. And Randy Couture made him look like it was nothing. Like the minute you took him to the ground, you know, boom, you know, like it was over. And because they have no understanding of that discipline. So if you're an infighter, you can't keep the distance and you don't have effective takedown defense, well, you're going to go to the ground. And if you don't have effective jiu-jitsu, you're going to get tapped out by a jiu-jitsu person. But I believe that Mike Tyson, and also if you can go back, Bruce Lee or any of those old school guys, they'd be like, they would recognize the limitations of their approach and correct them, just like Chuck Norris did. And that's a good example. Chuck Norris was a contemporaneous with Bruce Lee and all these guys. And, you know, Chuck Norris is a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and became very friendly with the Gracies and the Machados, and is, you know, he has his own style. It's based on Korean martial arts, but the style, to get a black belt in his style, you must also be, I think, at least a purple belt or brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So he's like, we need this, right? Mm-hmm. And the same with Bruce Lee's student, Dan Inosanto, black belt under the Machados in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Mm-hmm. And, you know, they're like, hey, this is a legitimate fighting thing. We need to correct this. And I'm sure Mike Tyson, well, I don't think he'd be rolling on the mats with the Gracies probably, but would, you know, invest a tremendous amount of time if in defending the takedown and trying to do that.
Yeah.
One person we're not mentioning.
Can I guess?
Who?
Steven Seagal?
No.
Oh, all right.
I mean, I would. That guy would just forget it. Anyway, but that guy's a piece of crap. But anyway, that's another story. But no, a contemporary boxer that nobody talks about going into MMA is Lomachenko.
Okay, I thought you were gonna say Mayweather.
No, but Mayweather looks like he's going to. Probably not. He'll get killed.
Well, since McGregor will be in jail.
Right. But you know, Lomachenko is a great example of a guy who actually would do amazing in MMA because his style boxing was great. The guy is the best boxer around today. Forget about Mayweather. Lomachenko is the man. If you listen, you haven't had a chance to see this man's wizardry. He is amazing. He's the best boxer of our generation, and it's criminal to not, people talking about Triple G or this or that. Lomachenko is the man. This is the guy. He is a wizard. Can't touch him. He's everywhere. And he also has wrestling background as a kid. And some of the techniques he uses are wrestling techniques. Like when he's in the clinch, he does a thing called an arm drag. He does an arm drag to a cross. And one of my students, Marlon, keyed me into that. He's like, look, he did this. It's an arm drag. And I'm like, oh my God, he's wrestling. He's taking wrestling and putting in boxing and beating people. And I was like, whoa, that is so cool. And he is amazing. And if he transitioned to MMA, because he also has a wrestling back. There's a video. He was on Instagram. He was posting a video of him doing wrestling takedowns about 6-7 months ago. I have to find it, but maybe we can find it. And he's actually pretty good. He's not amazing, but he's a pretty good wrestler. Cool. And if he took like 2 years, I think he would be a force to be reckoned with. Now, then we have the 50 Cent, is signed to do an MMA fight now.
No.
Yes.
Where was I?
You missed that. He's going into Bellator. It's crazy.
Of course, Bellator.
Yeah, of course, because it's a sideshow. But 50 Cent, as I understand, I don't know anything about it, but I understand one of them told me he's actually quite a good boxer, and he won the Gold Gloves or something like that when he was way back when. So it's not like he doesn't know how to box at all, but it's too late for him to adjust. It's too late. It's too late. This is where we say, okay, yeah, maybe you were, obviously amateurs is not the highest level of boxing, but he was a good boxer, I'm sure, if he was, competitive in the Golden Gloves. But there's only so far that specificity and focus on one style will take you.
He's like 100 years old.
How old is he? 46?
He's too old. Well,
Yeah,
he's not too old for Bellator.
Yeah, no kidding. They should have like the seniors division. You know what they should do? They should put him against like Frank Shamrock.
42.
Oh my God! You know what they did because they had Frank? They should put him against Hoist Gracie. Him versus Hoist Gracie. That'd be a fun fight. That'd be a sideshow, but I would probably watch it. That's terrible, but I probably would.
All my money is still on Gracie.
Yeah, of course. You'd kill him.
My God.
Yeah, and again because he has such a hole in that all you had to do grab him, take him down, and that's it. But so so we have all these famous people going into MMA or thinking about. I'm sorry.
Was it Marshall Falk? Didn't he fight? Marshall Falk. Marshawn. No, there was a football player that went to MMA.
Yeah. No, there's he was in the last UFC, right? There's an ex-football player, the fat guy.
No, he was a quarterback.
Oh, I don't know. But there in the last one there was the last UFC there was the fat football player who, and it was terrible. But he was there. And what's his name in Bellator? Matt Mitrione used to be a football player.
Yeah?
Yeah, Matt Mitrione was a football player. And
Brendan Schaub wasn't
Brendan Schaub was a football player too. Yeah.
Herschel Walker.
Oh, Herschel Walker.
Yeah, I remember.
saw that.
That was a sideshow.
It was a sideshow, but
He was jacked on so much steroids.
Oh, you think so?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but
See how muscular he was? He was like 50 years old.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, you're probably right. I don't know. But I was actually it was a sideshow. He did a lot better than I thought he would.
He did well. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he did a lot better than I thought he would.
Yeah.
But then again, this is the thing is skirting the line between entertainment and sideshow. It's very difficult. In Japan, unfortunately, has there's no line. We're all entertainment, and Bellator is kind of copying that Japanese model. The UFC dabbles in it. They dabble in it MC. What's it? Punk? CM Punk, right? Yeah. CM Punk, or who has no business being in the ring, but he's so famous. I mean, honestly, he should be in the ring, but he should be in an amateur ring. He should be doing little low amateur shows.
Fight up the ring,
right? But he can't. That happened to my old coach Marcelo Garcia, where he's such a name in jiu-jitsu, and Mackenzie Dern to extent too. There's such big names in jiu-jitsu, they can't get amateur fights. It's like they have to just go to the pros right away.
It's funny. From the other side of the lens, Ronda Rousey in the WWE, there's people that complain about her not working her way up, and she's getting a title fight right away.
But it's fake.
I know, but they're still well, other people have done their time, and you just come in here as a name, and all of a sudden you get a title fight.
Right. I guess that's
it's just
true.
So interesting.
Yeah.
They're complaining that Ronda Rousey doesn't deserve a title fight.
is I'm not. I really don't know WWE, but is there? I didn't even know there was like a significant female wrestling.
There actually is.
Really?
Yeah.
I knew they had the side girls, the girls that were.
I think they started out that way, where they were just like the cheerleaders on the side, and then they started letting them fight, and it was more like a Foxy boxing kind of thing, where they would, NFL and lingerie kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then it became more and more serious, and it's
as serious as WWE can be. But no, but I see what you're saying. Yeah.
I think there's actually some other UFC fighters that are moving over there that were in the women's division.
Easy
or
money.
Invicta.
Right. You know who'd be perfect for that? Magana. And yeah, because she's such a trash talker. She sucks at MMA. She'd go to the UFC, WWE, and that's perfect for her.
I'm going to ask you to talk about something real quick because we're running out of time. But I know it probably end up being a long conversation. But Raquel Pennington's corner not stopping the fight.
Yeah, I can't believe we didn't mention that.
We got about 10 minutes. What the hell was going on there?
Right. That is very, very. Yeah, that is very problematic. When she, then this is what I said to my wife, and we were watching it, and so this is what happened. In the corner, in between rounds, she said, "I'm done.
Yeah, I don't want to go.
I don't want to do this anymore." No, I think she just said, "I'm done."
Yeah.
I don't know what she said after that, but I heard, "I'm done," and it was repeated. I don't know what she said after that, but she said, "I'm done." And the corner said, "Get your mind out of that. Be positive. Come on, let's go and do it." Her nose was broken, but she was not dealing with like traumatic, like she couldn't see straight, or she was not concussed. So as far as we can tell, obviously I was not there, but she had her senses. She was speaking properly. She was not wobbling, but her nose was jacked. It was really, really not good.
That final round was rough.
Yeah. And obviously she some serious, probably a fracture, and she couldn't breathe. And when that nose breaks, a lot of times the blood runs down your nasal cavity into your throat, which makes your cardio much harder. Because you're basically aspirating your blood a little bit, right? But not life threatening. So it's not like something you could die from or anything like that. It's not like a concussion where the guy should take a beating. But there's two sides of this, right? One, we don't know her coaches and her relationship, because she might be like, when someone says to me, "I'm done," it could be like, she could have meant, I'm physically gassed. I can't lift my arms. I'm done. She didn't say, "I quit." She did not say, "I quit." Mm-hmm. She said, "I'm done," as I understand it. So sometimes you have these with fighters where you have to push your fighter to push further. And that they're not going to get hurt or something like that. I'm not saying that was this case. But if she verbally said, "I am finished," and the coach understood her to mean, "I am finished, I'm not going to do this anymore," and she kept fighting, he put her out there, at the end of the day, that's kind of irresponsible, I always check in. The first thing I say in the corner, and I'm not the most experienced cornerman, I have a long way to go, but the first thing I do is, "Are you hurt? What's going on physically? You hurt? You good? Good? We're good? Okay, good. All right, let's go." Because if that answer is, "I'm hurt," then we take a different path. If the answer is, "I'm hurt," I have to go, okay, my job, and this is the way it's going to be for all my fighters, is to make sure my fighter has a great quality of life after that fight. If he can win that fight, great, but we're not taking it into a place where he's going to have damage for the rest of her life. That being said, a broken nose is not life-threatening. I'm not a physician, but at my understanding at this point, a destroyed nose, like, remember the Rory McDonald, what's his name, Robbie Lawler fight? Did you see that fight? His nose was basically okay. I mean, it was like destroyed. Yeah. It was absolutely destroyed. I've never seen anything more viscerally repulsive in my entire MMA. Like, that wasn't like horrible breaks. I mean, the nose was gone. There was no nose left, and they're just racking on each other, and they're cracking up after the fight. They're hugging each other, and it was worse than that fractured.
Sure.
I've never seen anything like that. So go look it up. It's Robbie Lawler,
I'll
Roy
do it over
McDonald.
dinner tonight.
It is, yeah. Don't have any food next to it, especially like
Spaghetti.
exactly right. Like whoa. So it's not like she was concussed or life threatening. But then again, if she said, "I'm not doing this anymore," you should be like towel.
Yeah.
But she came back and she fought hard, but then she got clipped in that nose again, and it was done, right? Yeah.
She had virtually no chance of winning. So what was to gain of going another?
That's
I mean,
true.
she could have got a lucky hit in and knocked her out.
Puncher's chance. No, but she was outclassed. Like it was a different class of fighter. That's like we were saying in the beginning of the podcast, the female division, the A class, the Nunez's, the Joanna Jędrzejczyk, the Shevchenkos, they're one level, and then there's Magana or like Amanda Cooper, or these are the other level, and they should not be fighting. It's this chum to the Sharks. There's a big drop off, and that's a problem with that division, But it's the way the guys' division was 15 years ago, so it is part of the maturing of women's MMA. It's I don't think you can help it. And yeah, you're right. There's probably nothing to win by going another round. So if I were in that position, I can't say it, but I'm looking now. I almost certainly would have thrown the towel in. But then again, that her coach has a very personal relationship with that guy.
They know
They know
what they're saying.
They know what they're saying. You could say, "I'm done."
Lines,
yeah, it could be, "I'm done, but I'm just tired," or like, "Well, I need something from you." And he pushed her. And you know what? She can also look back as a fighter, not as a coach. I'm thinking that she look back at him. Okay, I took a beating, but I did it. I finished it. I got to the finish line. I didn't quit. Yeah. And as fighters, that's important for the next fight. For that mental fortitude that you did it. You did it. Okay. It wasn't the end of the world. Uh-huh. You pushed through. As long as you're not endangering them, their long-term health. And I would say, that the destruction of someone's nose, when you take the hit on your nose, not your brain, it's not so bad. I mean, it hurts like crazy. It's incredibly painful. As long as you didn't have an orbital bone fracture, which can, hurt the vision, or a fracture or a concussion or something like that, I think it wasn't as irresponsible as some people say. But if it were me and my fighter said, I'm done, and meant I'm done, I can't fight anymore, mm-hmm. I would put the towel in. But I would also say this: if I had a fighter who in 3 rounds said I'm done, who wasn't concussed, didn't have any broken bones in ribs or something like that, and could physically fight, I'd be like, what the fuck are you doing? Retire after this fight. You know what I mean? Like that's another thing.
Don't give up,
yeah, you should. You should fight to the bitter end and protect yourself. And she didn't suffer so much brain trauma that you got to go out on your shield if you're a fighter. You have to do that. And I think he was thinking of the next fight, because if she mentally broke and she could not recover, she should retire. So there's, that she has to, like we were saying in fighters, they have to have that hunger to not stop. Mm. If you don't have that hunger, you're always going to say, I broke. And you're broken.
Was that her first time going 5 rounds? Did you know if I'm not
I
sure.
think so, yeah. I don't recall her having, right, exactly. I don't recall her having a title fight before.
Well, I'm excited to kind of see what she says. I don't think she's come out and like given a statement on her side of the story. Maybe she has other things to tell us.
Also, you know what? I don't think she has a problem with that. It didn't seem like she was tight with her coach.
If she didn't want to fight, she could have just sat down.
Yeah, right, exactly. There's nobody putting like a cattle prod behind her. It's not like
well, Dana White would have been upset.
Mad Max. No, I don't think so. Because she had a broken. Her nose is broken, but nobody's putting cattle prod to her and saying you must fight. One man in, one woman in, one woman out. Two come in, one.
Tina Turner wasn't there.
No, because there's the Roberto Duran, no mas. He and there was a fighter in I forget recently, but he sat on the stool and he's like, I'm done. I'm just done. Yeah. It wasn't recently. It was a while ago, but now that I think about it, but he was, and there was one in the Ultimate Fighter I remember very, very, very much. And the Ultimate Fighter coach was telling him, get off your fucking ass and fight. But he's like, no, I'm done. And he's like, I'm done. And he's like, you're not hurt. Go. Yeah. But he's like, I'm done. And that means you should retire from fighting.
That's hard to recover from in the gym.
Right. That means you should retire from fighting. If you don't have that fire to push through, within health reasons, this game is not for you. it's not for you. And that's okay. That's okay.
Go join the WWE.
Right, exactly.
All right, we're running out of time.
Like Ronda Rousey.
Like
Ronda Rousey's broken.
She ran away.
No, but she's broken. She broke, and she will not put the pieces together.
Yeah.
And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But you shouldn't fight MMA anymore.
She isn't.
Maybe she's smart. She made that choice.
So maybe somebody helped her with that choice. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Thanks for listening. We have run out of time. Want to give a shout out to your friend's podcast. He did a episode recently that I listened to. It was really good.
The Bruce Lee one?
Yes.
Oh, it was amazing.
Yes.
Sam Yang Must Triumph.
Must Triumph.
And
check out that show.
And if you like it, write a review for our podcast and his.
Yeah.
Because, the iTunes reviews make a big deal.
They do.
He's his number one. Very eclectic, very interesting podcast. He has another one on the Little Prince, the book of the Little Prince, and how it has to do with the martial journey.
One, no.
Yeah, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful addition to our world of martial arts and having a discussion that's a little bit more elevated than let's just kick their asses, like there's something a little bit more interesting there, and this is martial arts, not mixed martial arts for him. It's martial arts, meaning it's a much broader understanding of that journey.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to bring it back down to the gutter, Conor McGregor still not in jail. Conor McGregor watch. So so far so good. I'm winning this bet. I don't know what the timeline is on this. I guess
forever,
after he goes to trial.
Forever. No, forever.
Forever?
Yeah, forever.
My God, I can't do
that.
that.
No, I mean for this particular.
Because he's eventually going to go to jail.
Right. No.
Forever.
I mean for this particular
this offense.
Right,
okay. All right. Yes, please rate, review, share the show. Let your friends know if you like us. If you don't like us, let us know, and we can fight you in the streets.
I wonder if he's gonna run from it. Like if they give him time.
Where's he gonna go? Well, he's got enough money. He can go anywhere.
Any place that they don't have extradition.
Yeah.
I don't know if Ireland has extradition to the U.S.
I bet they do.
It's not as common as you think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I'm going to look it up. All right. Wonderful discussion.
Yes, sir.
Generalists, are generalists win or do specific guys win? And then we talked about fighter heart and breaking and,
Interested if somebody's ever done like the statistic breakdown, like who's won generalist versus specific.
It's hard to tell because like who's a generalist, who's a,
they'd have to tell you or you'd have to believe them.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah. You can't believe anybody.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, I look forward to, that was great discussion.
We will see you guys next week. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.